In the heart of Ukraine lies a city frozen in the 1980s, a silent, ghostly place with crumbling apartment buildings, rusting Ferris wheels, and streets slowly being reclaimed by the forest. And now, wandering amongst the ruins, are dogs with bright blue fur. Today, we're diving into the story of the Chernobyl disaster, one of humanity's worst technological failures, and the mystery of the so-called blue dogs that roam its exclusion zone. On April 26, 1986, just after 1 a.m., reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded. That night, engineers were running a safety test. They wanted to know if, during a power loss, the plant's turbines could keep generating enough electricity to power the cooling pumps, just long enough for backup generators to start. It was supposed to be a routine test, but almost everything about it went wrong. The test was performed at dangerously low power levels, and the reactor design used at Chernobyl was unstable under those conditions. When its coolant water turned to steam, the reaction didn't slow down as it should have, it actually sped up. To make matters worse, the operators disabled several automatic safety systems. They even shut down the emergency core cooling mechanism to prevent it from interrupting the test. Power levels dropped too low, and in trying to recover them, the crew pulled out most of the control rods, the very tools meant to keep the reactor stable. When they finally hit the emergency shutdown button, the control rods re-entered the reactor. But instead of stopping the reaction, they made things catastrophically worse. Each rod had a graphite tip, and as they descended, those tips displaced cooling water and created a momentary surge in reactivity. In that instant, the reactor went supercritical. 2 massive explosions tore through the building, blasting the 1,000-ton reactor lid into the air. Flames shot skyward, and radioactive debris rained down across the plant. The worst nuclear accident in history had just begun. The nearby city of Pripyat, home to about 50,000 people, wasn't evacuated until nearly 36 hours later. By then, residents had been unknowingly exposed to dangerously high levels of radiation. Helicopters dropped sand, boron, and lead over the burning core in a desperate attempt to contain the disaster. Eventually, a concrete sarcophagus was built to entomb the reactor. Over time, a 30-kilometer exclusion zone was created, an area so contaminated that it was deemed uninhabitable for thousands of years. Villages were emptied, and roads fell silent. Forests began to grow where people once lived. With people gone, Chernobyl became an unintentional wildlife reserve. Deer, elk, boar, bears, and wolves all returned. Birds nested in crumbling schools, fish swam in cooling ponds once filled with radiation, and roaming amongst them were hundreds of stray dogs, descendants of pets left behind during the evacuation. For decades, these dogs survived on scraps, scavenging near checkpoints and lingering around workers and researchers who sometimes brought them food. Over time, they formed stable, semi-wild populations throughout the exclusion zone. Scientists began studying them, seeing the dogs as a natural experiment, a way to understand how mammals adapt to long-term exposure to radiation and other contaminants. Recent genetic studies revealed that these dogs are genetically distinct from populations outside the zone. But here's the surprising part. Researchers found no evidence that they're mutating faster or suffering widespread genetic damage. The differences appear to come from isolation and natural selection, not from radiation-induced mutation. In short, the dogs are different, but not in the mutant way people typically imagine. In late 2025, new images started circulating online. Photos of dogs in the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone with striking blue fur. At first glance, it looked like something out of a comic book, but the reality is far less fantastical, though still mysterious. A Ukrainian nonprofit group called Dogs of Chernobyl, which works to care for and sterilize the stray population, reported encountering at least 3 of these blue dogs. Their fur wasn't naturally pigmented, it was stained. The most likely explanation? They rolled in or were exposed to some kind of chemical or industrial dye, perhaps from an old waste site or porta potty. The area still contains countless abandoned industrial facilities, labs, and storage sites. It's entirely possible that a leaking container or chemical residue dyed their fur. So while Radiant Blue Mutants makes for a gripping headline, the truth is much more down to earth. These dogs are victims of pollution, not living symbols of mutation. Still, the images of blue-furred animals wandering through a nuclear wasteland are haunting. a vivid reminder of how humans have altered this landscape even decades after the disaster. Despite its grim origins, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone has become one of the most unexpected wildlife refuges on Earth. The radiation remains dangerous, especially in certain hotspots, but it's not uniformly lethal. Many animals live in areas with relatively lower levels of contamination. The absence of humans has created a very favorable environment for wildlife. Without roads, farming, or hunting, ecosystems have found the freedom to regenerate. Forests have reclaimed farmland, predators have returned, and populations that were once hunted are thriving again. In a strange way, Chernobyl shows how resilient nature can be and how quickly it rebounds when humans step aside, even in the shadow of catastrophe. Nearly 40 years later, Chernobyl is both a cautionary tale and a paradox. It warns us of the dangers of hubris, of what happens when human error meets flawed technology. Yet it also offers a strange kind of hope, even in the most damaged landscapes.
Life, finds a way.
The dogs of Chernobyl, ordinary, scrappy survivors, have become symbols of endurance. They aren't mutants or monsters, they're reminders of loyalty, adaptation, and the complicated relationship between people and the environments we leave behind. And the blue dogs, though likely stained by chemicals rather than shaped by radiation, carry that symbolism even further. They are living ghosts of a disaster that refuses to fade, walking testaments to how our footprint lingers, not always in the ways we expect. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'd truly appreciate your support.